Hoboken, New Jersey was the small town where Elizabeth Hamilton was born and raised in. She was always an intelligent and strong woman who got things done on her own. She made the most of the little she had while growing up, and her dreams came true when she was accepted to the most prestigious university in the town. This was the time for her to build the life she always wanted. Elizabeth's dream was always to become a successful reporter or journalist. On the day she received her acceptance letter from the University of California, she knew that her dreams were coming true. She promised herself that she would focus on her studies, but that soon changed when Benjamin Hamilton walked into her life. One day, some college friends were having a party, and they convinced Elizabeth to join them. Elizabeth was never the partying type, and felt like a fish out of water there. The room was filled with pretty, skinny girls. Despite her intelligence and charming character, she still felt ugly. She felt less feminine in front of them, and couldn't compare to their fashion sense. Every time she saw Benjamin, she was reminded of how fortunate she was that a man as attractive as him was actually interested in her. He was more concerned with her brain than her average physical appearance. Elizabeth tried to always keep his attention and learn as much about him as possible. However, her roommate wasn't fond of him and thought he had ulterior motives for their relationship. "Don't talk to him anymore. You don't know where he comes from," she quietly whispered to her aside. Elizabeth was even more intrigued. She had a thing for bad boys and inquired further about the handsome stranger. Elizabeth couldn't help but be captivated by that dark, strange man, so of course she did not listen. She was completely besotted by him and did not take the warning of her friend. Love is blind, as they say. The steamy relationship continued, and some of their friends joked about how cute they were together. Her roommate did not find this amusing, and eventually started distancing herself from her once close friend. Elizabeth was a young woman experiencing love for the first time, and didn't care about her roommate. In fact, she thought she was jealous and wanted Ben for herself. She often caught her roommate staring at him, and wondered if she had feelings for him. In her school years, Elizabeth was always the quiet, studious girl. Boys were her friends, but didn't treat her how they would treat the other, prettier girls. She was like one of the boys. It never really bothered her at first. She always took pride in being the most intelligent girl in the classroom. Now, as a young woman, she realized how important physical appearances are, especially when you want someone to love you back. Soon after their college graduation, Benjamin proposed to Elizabeth. She was in shock, but didn't question him and immediately said yes. She wanted to keep a tight hold on him, forever. They were overjoyed. This was their time. Nothing else mattered more than their being together at that moment. The couple finally had their perfect dream wedding. They were not a religious couple, but at a small ceremony in a park near the church, and it was both intimate and special. Elizabeth felt like things were finally starting to go her way. Benjamin looked happy on his wedding day. It really did look like the couple had a true love for each other. But some guests were not convinced and thought that enigmatic Benjamin had a secret agenda for his relationship with the successful, independent Elizabeth. He swore on his life that Elizabeth was the woman he had always dreamed of, but many people thought he was way out of her league. Even Elizabeth herself caught herself entertaining those kinds of thoughts occasionally. However, she kept trying to brush them off, chalk them up to her own insecurities, and enjoy the picture-perfect husband life had sent her way. Their life together had a strong start, but the young couple soon started to encounter problems they were not prepared for. Benjamin was very busy, but so was Elizabeth. She was still determined to come out at the top of her field, and he was no different. However, when they did have time to spend together, he would spend most of it on his cell phone. But there was more. Benjamin rarely helped out around the house, and she did not have the time to take care of everything. Elizabeth then decided to hire a maid named Mallory to help lessen their load. Benjamin took an instant liking to her, to the point where Elizabeth felt uncomfortable. Mallory was a beautiful woman, and she reminded Elizabeth of everything that she was not. She knew she was just being paranoid, so she shrugged it off. As she had already done numerous times since she started her relationship with Benjamin, she tried to tell herself that those were just her insecurities talking. She loved him, and he loved her. Mallory proved to be a huge help, and Elizabeth treated her like family. Elizabeth believed she was someone she could trust, but she was wrong. The first time Elizabeth caught Mallory and Benjamin having an intimate conversation, she convinced herself that she was making things up. However, the conversations became more frequent and more flirtatious. At first, she tried to ignore it, but eventually it came to a point where she couldn't deal with it any longer. She started to resent them, and she knew she had to do something about it. Elizabeth confronted her husband about his behavior and how it made her feel. She opened up about her insecurities, how sometimes she didn't feel enough for him, and her pain when she saw certain things. He promised he would be a better husband to her. His behavior changed overnight, and she remembered why she fell in love with him in the first place. However, he would soon show her why she could not trust him. Benjamin's behavior improved, and after a lengthy discussion, the pair decided it was time to expand their little family. It was the perfect time to have a child. They were both successful in their respective fields. They were making good money and even purchased their dream home. However, they would soon find a dramatic bump in the road of their relationship. They tried for months for a baby, but every pregnancy test returned negative. Elizabeth contacted every specialist in the country and made appointments with them all. Elizabeth was finally able to see a future for herself as a mother, and she was willing to do whatever it took to make her dream a reality. However, she would soon be disappointed once again. It was a difficult time for her, and she had to endure it all alone. Benjamin was back to his old habits, and he spent more time away from home than with her. He was acting strangely, and Mallory's presence only made matters worse. For the first time, Elizabeth started fearing that her dreams of a picture-like relationship had been nothing more than that, dreams. But would it get better? What should she do? Elizabeth felt disappointed in herself. She could not give her husband a child, and the years could have been kinder to her. She remembered her friends' warnings about Benjamin and regretted not having considered them or having set more serious boundaries with him. To add insult to injury, she noticed that he had been making weekly cash withdrawals from their joint account. She knew she needed to get to the bottom of things. One evening, she sat Benjamin down and shared her suspicions regarding Mallory. Benjamin immediately shot them down and tried to convince her that she was being paranoid. He pointed out how helpful the maid had been over the years and said he felt like it was unfair to make him feel bad for showing gratitude to the woman who kept their house clean and presentable. Elizabeth, scared of upsetting her husband, agreed, and that was the end of the conversation. Elizabeth stuck by Benjamin's side for 45 years. He grew more distant as the years went by, with random bursts of love and affection that kept becoming more and more inconsistent and rare. His relationship with Mallory was also more friendly than Elizabeth liked, but she knew he would never hurt her in that way. She would soon learn how terribly wrong she was. After being with Benjamin for so many years, it saddened her that she felt like she had spent her whole life with a stranger. But shortly after, the couple was hit with some tragic news. She noticed his health was deteriorating. It kept getting worse and worse, and it seemed quite serious. After several visits to different doctors, he was soon diagnosed with a terminal illness. She asked Mallory to work extra hours to help take care of Benjamin, and she happily agreed. Knowing that she was on the verge of losing the love of her life, she pushed down all of her doubts and regrets to be there for him. She couldn't let her own insecurities ruin what might be her husband's last days in this world. Benjamin's condition quickly deteriorated, and it was not long after he passed away. Elizabeth was struck with debilitating grief when she learned she had lost her husband. She wanted to do right by him and give him the burial he deserved. After all, that man had stood by her and given her many memories she would treasure forever. She couldn't suspect that her grief would very soon turn into rage. She drove to the mortuary to ask to preserve her husband's body so that his loved ones could say their goodbyes. She could barely come to terms with the heartbreaking truth. The man she had loved so much was gone forever. However, when she took a look at her husband's clothing, she spotted something that made her blood boil. On the right sleeve of his shirt, she saw a button that she knew she had seen before. He was wearing the shirt that Mallory gave him as a gift so many years ago. When she noticed the left sleeve's button was missing, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She rushed home and rummaged through her husband's belongings, and what she found sent shivers down her spine. She found a box titled, "This is a simple gift for you, my darling." She opened the box and found pictures of her husband and Mallory laughing together with two children she had never seen before in her life. She had known Mallory for decades, and she had never mentioned having children. The box also contained something else that made her stomach drop to her knees and tears come to her eyes: the missing button and numerous love letters. As she became aware that there was obviously a relationship between them, her heart began to pound in her chest, and tears began flowing down her cheeks. Her whole life had been nothing but a lie. There were no words to describe the pain she felt when she realized her husband had been living a double life. She knew she had no other choice but to get her revenge. The first thing she did was confront Mallory. She had been with the Hamilton family for decades, and she couldn't believe this was her way of thanking her. She admitted that the children were Benjamin's and that he had been supporting them for years. She tried to beg for her forgiveness, but it fell on deaf ears. She then contacted their friends and family and informed them what her husband had done. She also told them that she would no longer attend his burial or help arrange it. Everyone supported her decision. But what was next for Elizabeth? Benjamin's burial came and went, but Elizabeth made sure not to even think about him. Even though she felt as if she had wasted most of her years on a man that did not deserve her love and care, she knew her life was only just beginning.